So again, good morning to everybody. I'm Giulia Poggiorni from EUBIA, partners of the BIOMAC Project. And today we are at the second training activity of the BIOMAC Project, which is a series of training webinars meant to openly share knowledge and details about specific topics that relate to the activities of the BIOMAC Project. Today, we will discover the rationale of open innovation testbeds, as BIOMAC is in a way an open innovation testbed, and their unique advantages for product development. We will understand the full potential of the OITBs and the range of services that specifically BIOMAC provides, and also the rationale of the single entry point, which is the way through which SMEs and external applicants can interact with to access the services of the Open Innovation Testbed. So for this purpose, today we have Annika Frank from IBB, which is the single entry point of the BIOMAC project, who will illustrate us how the Open Innovation Testbed works and how SMEs can benefit from the services. So Annika, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Giulio. I hope you can see and hear me okay. So I will just quickly jump back. So yes, Giulio just mentioned, my name is Annika. I'm a project manager with the Munich-based IBB. We're a networking company. And for the BIOMAC project, we work as single entry point for one, but we also take over quite a few administrative reporting functions, which is why the idea was that we present the structure and the function of open innovation testbeds to you today, because we've been dealing with this quite a lot over the past 2 years. But more about the project later. First of all, I'd like to give you a little bit of an introduction into the OITB theory and structure. So I promise this is the only slide where I will actually read something out to you, which is a little more lengthy. So open innovation, what does that mean? Open innovation has been defined roughly 20 years ago as the use of purposive inflows and outflows of knowledge to accelerate internal innovation, to expand markets for external use of innovation prospectively. So this paradigm assumes that firms can and should use external ideas as well as internal ideas and internal and external paths to market as they look to advance their technology. This is quite a complex but very well-known definition. But I think this needs a little more highlighting and practice to explain what this open innovation really means. That's an important concept. And for this purpose, the European Commission launched a work program in 2018, or actually a few years before, to focus on the idea of open innovation and bringing it into industry, and specific sort of subject areas like nanotechnology, advanced materials, biotechnology, advanced manufacturing and processing. And this work program resulted in a variety of projects, which you can see here. So these projects covered a large area of science and technology. The top one you will recognize, this is BIOMAC. We will introduce BIOMAC a little more later on. But yeah, a lot of work has been done over the past few years. Some of these projects are actually in their final stages. They will complete their work this year. Others, such as BIOMAC, are sort of halfway through. And pretty much at the peak of their activities now. We're having like half time in our project work. And a lot is happening just now. But a little more about this later. So we meet today to actually find out what an open innovation testbed is and what it means. And as usual, there are a lot of definitions from the European Commission, which is good, but a little bit tricky in a presentation to actually get across. So just to name a few keywords, an open innovation testbed has the function to provide common access to a large number of physical facilities and capabilities and services all at once. The idea is that way technologies, and in our case, nanotechnologies in particular, can be upscaled easily and that customers of an open innovation testbed can tap into a large number of competencies and services easily. This minimizes costs, it reduces technological risks, and it also provides access to services which are driven directly by business needs, which are not artificially created, but they come out of the needs of businesses. And importantly, OITBs, and OITB is rarely on its own. There are a large number of open innovation testbeds, and they will set up networks amongst themselves and sort of multiply this idea of sort of collaborative work and being able to achieve more if you do it together and in a large group. And eventually, these open innovation testbeds have the common feature that they provide users with a single entry point to all of their services, which is important, and which I'll go into detail about a little bit later. They can pool resources and they pool knowledge, and thus create a large European network of competencies. This might still be a little bit abstract, so to go a little bit further into what really exactly is an open innovation testbed, I'm actually drawing on some very nice graphics that the European Commission has published in 2021, their publications office in particular, and they sort of highlighted what open innovation testbeds can do, and this is a very nice sort of illustration of what they are as well. So as I mentioned, open innovation testbeds are large structures which can be accessed through a single entry point, meaning a customer wanting to use the services of an open innovation testbed does not have to contact each and every single partner, but one single entry point. They harmonize processes of upscaling, of characterization, of modeling, and include all these processes in the whole. They enable access to services at a fair price. They thus increase the return on investment. They provide a large amount of information and assistance on EU rules, which is not a trifling issue if you've ever worked with EU regulations. They naturally boost the transition to greener technologies by providing access to them. And they make technologies and nanotechnologies and advanced materials accessible in a much easier way than it would have been done otherwise. This is important not just for bio-nanomaterials, but for a large field of applications. And again, I'm drawing here on their EU sources that highlight this actually very nicely. They have set aside 250 million euros in funding for projects in various areas. These include lightweight nano-enabled materials and components, the nano-enabled surfaces, membranes, functional materials for building envelopes, the safety testing of medical technologies, the bio-based nanomaterials and solutions, which you'll hear loads about in a few minutes, and the nanopharmaceuticals production. So really a largish area of applications under the general cover of nanomaterials and advanced materials. I mentioned this system of a single entry point before. So this is actually very important if you talk about such big clusters and structures such as open innovation testbeds. A single entry point means that a lot of partners that work together do not have to individually communicate with customers, but that happens through one single point of contact, the so-called SEP. This SEP has several tasks they can fulfill. They include preliminary evaluation of a project proposal. They look at legal concerns, contracting. They support the customers in all of their questions. They communicate, which is the key and crucial task of the single entry point. They naturally acquire clients for the open innovation testbeds as well, and they take over administrative tasks. But most importantly, they have the possibility and the responsibility as well to represent the partners in an open innovation testbed, and thus facilitate all of the processes involved. How do you establish such an SEP? So there are different options, and if you talk to the various open innovation testbeds that have come out of these calls that are mentioned by the European Commission, the testbeds have also gone for various options. Either an SCP can be established at the beginning with a project launch, or it can be established as part of the project. This also has downstream implications. So the SCP activities can be covered by one of the project partners who has the necessary experience, or they can also be subcontracted to someone outside. All of these features obviously having advantages and disadvantages. And as a result, the SCP can act as something like a front office with the partner, especially the internal partner, advertising everything right out openly, and as the single entity, or can be more like a marketplace with tenure opportunities. And this is actually, I think, the best way to explain the structure of the open innovation testbeds and the single entry point. But to give this a little bit of practice and a little bit of structure, how this really looks like in a project, we have naturally chosen the BIOMAC project to show you, and how the principles that I just highlighted work within our project. So Julia mentioned this briefly. BIOMAC is a project that started, a Horizon 2020 project, which started in 2021. We have 34 partners from 12 different EU countries who work together in a large system in an open innovation testbed for bio-nanomaterials, very successfully so far. We come together in the form of various hubs, which is probably the easiest way to describe the open innovation testbed. And these hubs are structured as follows. We have 17 pilot lines, and these pilot lines take over the practical aspects of bio-nanomaterial production, biomass fractionation, pretreatment, the production of intermediates and nanocomposites, and a final products and formulations. In addition, we have what's called so-called transversal services that accompany the actual production process, but are crucial because they enable the final product to really go, to really turn into a sellable product and to reach the technology readiness level of 7, in other words, being an industrial prototype. So these transversal service hubs are the value chain assessment hub, where our partners look into sustainability. They have developed a decision support tool for the supply management. They evaluate aspects of circular economy as well. This is accompanied by a validation services hub, where we have characterization, chemical, physical, technological characterization. The feedstocks and technologies are examined, and the processes we use are validated and modeled. And last but not least, we have the market uptake hub, where our colleagues look into innovation management. They address aspects of health and safety, because especially in the nanomaterial world, you will know that the safe by design approach is crucial. And very importantly, we have partners looking into regulation, and not just national, but EU-wide regulations and global regulations for working with biomaterials and with bio-nanomaterials. So this is all how all of our many, many partners come together and work as a whole. And to see if this does really work, we have means of internal validation within our project, which are our internal test cases. They come from 5 different areas: the automotive industry, agriculture, packaging, construction, and printed electronics. And I unfortunately don't have the time to go into a lot of detail at this point, because we want to talk a little more about OITB theory. But these test cases have shown very, very nicely for different sorts of products how all the partners, the pilot lines, as well as the transversal services, work together in production to create bio-nanomaterials which can be used for a large range of applications. But as a project, we want to survive. Things are meant to go on at the end of the funding period, which I'll go into detail about a little bit later. So we also need external validation. And to this end, we have started an open call at the end of 2022. So we started to look for new partners and for new test cases who want to develop their bio-nanomaterial products with us. And this open call is currently running. So if you're interested, please apply. We're looking for more test cases, for example, but this is just an absolute non-exhaustive list from information technologies. If you look in material development, biomedical applications, you have certain textile applications and many, many more, then this is a good place for you to develop your product. And as part of the project and this open call, it's completely free of charge, and you can submit your online application to us, and by June we will collect all of them, evaluate them, and pick 5 new external validation test cases. So this is how we validate. I would like to go a little bit more into detail about how we are structured with respect to the single entry point, because that's us, the IBB. You've seen this slide before. There are various options to set up the single entry point, and within BIOMAC we have decided to do the following. The SCP was actually established initially with project launch, so in the preparations running up to the launch of the project, an SCP was chosen, and it was decided that the activities were to be covered by one of the project partners. And we're really happy that this was chosen to be the IBB. And as a networking company, we're obviously very happy to be sort of the client and customer partner interaction point and communication turnstile. And with us have more of a front office function. So the test cases and clients and customers come to us and talk to us, and we are the direct central point of access. How does this work in a little more detail? So as I mentioned, the IBB sits somewhat in the middle between the clients, the test cases as long as the project runs, and the clients after the project. And we take up first contact with them. We deal with all sort of contractual work. We answer questions. We support them in the process of preparing project proposal. And we're there as the sort of key communication partner. And from the SCP, all the communication goes out to our many international partners and is then fed back to the clients. You can imagine that this is a complex process, which has to be regulated very tightly. So this is something which is prepared as part of this project as well, because the cooperation between so many different partners has to be clear, which is why this is sort of a bit of a work in progress scheme of how collaboration works. The BIOMAC client approaches us as SCP. We'll obviously take care of questions of confidentiality, non-disclosure agreement is signed, there'll be a project proposal, and we will talk through things in the preliminary stages. Then the information is passed on from the single entry point to the partners. The partners will issue a statement of work, they will create an offer. This will go back and forth between partners and SCP and the clients. And eventually an end user agreement or a service contract is signed between the client and the SCP. And the SCP here acts on behalf of the partners. And for each project, obviously the partners, the identity of the partners varies. So sometimes out of our 34 partners, maybe 5 are involved, sometimes 15 or 25. It can be very different, but that is adapted with each and every project, and eventually the service can be carried out and the bio product or bio nanomaterial product can be developed. And just one last slide, what happens to the project at the end of the funding period? And I decided not to actually go for any text here because I think this slide says it all. We want to think big. We want to actually really be self-sustained, which is the idea of the whole setup of this open innovation testbed. So at the moment, as I mentioned, external test cases have the chance to use our services free of charge. This will obviously change. We want to be a service provider on the market and a competitive service provider at the end, offering our services to the EU and globally, and make sure that we reach a lot of clients and have a functioning competitive market system with which is fee-based for the production of all materials, and with hopefully a lot of customers coming in and appreciating the many advantages of using such a large number of services at competitive prices for development of their projects, rather than going to all of the partners individually. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope this has given you a good first insight into what open innovation testbeds mean, and yeah, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Annika. So I invite all the attendees to post their questions in the Q&A box down below. And in the meantime, I have a first question for you, perhaps, which is, what do you think are the main challenges for the OITBs to reach out to their target audience? Because I have the perception that there is a substrate of SMEs and people who do innovation in every European countries, but sometimes they get lost in the ocean of information, but also ocean of opportunities. Also, I have the experience of several SMEs that are unaware of the funding opportunities in their own country. So how do you see these issues? Do you have experienced similar things, and how can OITBs overcome this problem?
Absolutely. I think the key issue is communication, which is something that we, I think in German you'd say something, we learn this while we're walking. So we learn this as part of the project. The OITBs are complex systems, and for customers coming in, I think there are a lot of uncertainties. How is this structured? Who do we talk to? What can we do ourselves? What can the partners do? Do I have to give away my entire project? Can I keep part of it? What happens to the IP? There are a lot of questions which we're all trying to answer as well as possible, and we're documenting everything we do, and we're documenting all the feedback and questions, and taking this all up into our sort of support that we give to the partners. But yeah, I think that's the key challenge, communicating everything in such a succinct way that it's clear to the partners what benefits the OITBs have, because they have a lot of benefits. It's just, yeah, they're obviously large structures, and they need to be explained in a really straightforward manner.
Okay, thanks a lot. And perhaps how do you see the trade-off between providing funding and providing services? Because this could be also a factor that can affect the choice of the SME. Do you think there are situations or kind of services that can prevail on the over the funding opportunities?
So just to make sure I understand you correctly, do you mean if for an SME it would be more favorable to apply for direct funding or to go through us and pay for a service?
Yeah.
I think the clear advantage of going through us is that it's significantly less bureaucratic. Obviously, you need to pay, but you do receive a very large number of services that just wouldn't come together, and that you wouldn't be able to handle yourself as an SME, and that would cause yourself as an SME incredible administrative hurdles. So that's something, yes, you would have to pay for, but you would get through the OITB, and you would have the security that your project and your project idea is actually produced in a sort of time efficient and straightforward way. Whereas if you apply for funding, I think we all know the uncertainties, and I'm obviously not, I'm obviously a big fan of applying for funding. This is what we do as our bread and butter every day. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you have something that you can develop already and you need a lot of different types of services and you have the finances to do it, I think it would be much more straightforward to go through the OITB and use the services which are then exist instead of reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, I think this is the key of the problem. At first sight, applying for direct funding could be more attracting, let's say. But then if you realize that the OITB, yeah, it's a one-stop shop, so you can get a lot of services. You get a lot of opportunities to upscale your ideas in one place. You can also interact with just one subject that then of course addresses all your problems. You pay, yes, but then imagine if you have to apply for the funding, then decide how to allocate this funding, and then you have to interact with different actors, so could become more tricky down the line. It's from a project management point of view, let's say. So for those who are listening, apply to the open call that is free. You will receive this services for free now, and then of course after the termination of the project, the open innovation testbed will stay and will continue to provide its services through a fee, of course, but this is much more easy for you than applying for direct funding in many cases, especially in those funding programs for SMEs that I've seen quite often do not provide 100% funding. So 50, 60, 70% funding. So it's not easy.
Absolutely. And it's important to keep in mind, I think, as well, that's when you apply for funding externally rather than going for the services straight away, you still need to put in a lot of staff hours. So they cost you at the same time. So invest them in your OITB.
Okay, I don't see other questions down. So if you are in the meantime, I'm giving the attendees the last seconds to pop up their questions. I would like to remind you that this recording will stay on the BIOMAC YouTube channel. We will repost it. It will be freely accessible, and actually next week on the 19th of April, we will have the third training activity of BIOMAC, which is going to focus on intellectual property rights. We'll have Unismart, another project partner. So be sure to follow it, of course, and we will post soon the registration link and with the associated promotion card. Then I see that the attendees are quite shy today. So thank you, Annika, and thank you to the attendees, and see you next time.
Thanks, Julio.